This week,
we've cracked it.
We cover the thrilling escape from the famed Alcatraz prison. And who doesn't love a good prison break, right?
Me too!
The famed hidden treasure of Forrest Fenn. Oh, could you imagine, though, if we find this treasure?
I'm in.
The suspicious death of Alexander Litvinenko. The details in this one remain murky.
That's good.
Let's do it. This week on BuzzFeed Unsolved, we covered the thrilling escape from the famed Alcatraz prison. The inmates who pulled this off did so by executing an ingenious and daring plan, and who doesn't love a good prison break, right?
I do. Will there be tunnels?
You could say there was a tunnel. I guess if you were sitting in a cell for a long time, you would be able to come up with pretty cool things to escape.
Yeah.
That being said, the things that they did come up with, I was impressed by.
Yeah.
But I'm easily impressed.
Well, I guess tell your story.
Okay, yeah.
Formerly a military base, Alcatraz Island opened as a federal maximum security prison in 1934. The prison was nicknamed The Rock due to the fact that the prison sits on a 22-acre island about 1.25 miles away from the city of San Francisco. Because of this, the prison gained a reputation as being inescapable, with water surrounding the prison hovering around 48 degrees Fahrenheit to 54 degrees Fahrenheit all year, along with formidable currents pulling strongly out to sea, leading up to low tide.
San Francisco is very cold.
It's very cold, and I have very delicate Southern California skin.
The coldest winter of my life was a summer in San Francisco.
Okay. I thought you were gonna go into your typical Midwestern people know winter and cold.
Midwestern people do know. I'll tell you.
Oh, Jesus Christ. Okay, no, it's fine. We don't have to go into it.
We know snow.
I'm very happy for you. What a feather in all your caps. So, shall we move on?
If you must.
Great.
As time went on, the prison would fall into disrepair, and the budget to fix things was limited. This would become an important factor in the inmates' escape. So without further ado, let's meet the escape crew. First up, we have the Anglin brothers, John William Anglin and his younger brother Clarence Anglin, both in their early 30s at the time of the escape. The brothers were serving time for robbing a bank together.
I wouldn't mind being in a jail cell with my bro.
Yeah, the thing is, like, being in prison, obviously not ideal.
Yeah.
But you got your bro there with
You got
you,
your
and they
bro.
actually were next door to each other.
That's very fun.
That's very fun.
Yeah.
That's a big bonding
I
moment.
wonder if one of them got the letter like, ooh, where are you going? And I was like, I'm going to Alcatraz. And he was like, me too!
They just jump up and down. Like they got accepted to college together.
Next, we have Frank Morris, in his mid-30s at the time of the escape, who had been abandoned as a young child, put in foster care and run away, and was then in and out of prisons since he was just 13 years old. He was also serving time for a bank robbery. The final member of the crew is Alan West, age 33 at the time of the escape. West began serving time by the age of 14 and bounced around various federal prisons. Our crew of escapees established, let's jump into the inception of the escape. It's said that West first approached Morris with a plan to escape in early 1960. West apparently knew of a ventilator cover above cell block B that might not be sealed over with concrete, as some of the other vents had been. If true, this could provide them with a way to get onto the roof of the prison from the inside. West also began working with the cell house maintenance crew, which gave him insight into the building's structure, layout, and weaknesses. By September 1961, the Anglin brothers, Morris, and West all had requested moves to cells that were close to each other in cell block B, directly under the unsecured vent cover. All cell moves were approved.
This goes back to my thinking that prison, maybe back then, or maybe in this particular prison, didn't seem so bad. You just put in a request, and they're like, oh, you want to move?
Yeah, I
You
mean,
want to be with your pals?
there's a.
Yeah, sure.
I mean, the thought is like, this is.
They should have just asked to leave.
I think this is maybe a lesson in humility for this prison, the prison guards and the prison warden.
Yeah.
Obviously, this prison has been thought of as this fortress of security. It's thought of as unescapable. It's surrounded by water.
Oh,
What's
so
the
there's
worst?
an element of hubris here.
Yeah. What's the worst they're gonna do? Do what you want. It doesn't matter because you're never gonna escape here.
In terms of who planned what, the details are a bit murky, but one thing is for sure. The plan that the four men would execute was undoubtedly bold and ingenious. That being said, let's break down the plan, starting with phase 1, deception. With Alcatraz, it wasn't just about escaping the prison walls, as it was also about making it back to the mainland and avoiding capture in that process. In order to prevent that, the men knew they needed a head start. To accomplish this, the men created painted dummy heads made from a plaster-like mix of soap, concrete, and other materials, and complete with human hair. They laid the heads in their beds to fool the guards. Sure enough, on June 12th, on the morning following the escape, when the 7 a.m. bell went off to wake the prisoners, guards discovered that the escapees appeared to still be asleep in their beds. It wasn't until one guard reached into Morris's cell and pushed the head, only for it to roll away and strike the ground, that the guards realized something was wrong. To this day, the dummy head that struck the ground still has the damage that resulted from this fall. It's unknown who came up with the idea to create dummy heads. However, Clarence worked as a barber and had access to human hair trimmings. Either way, Phase 1 deception was a success.
If I were that guard and I reached into that bed, "Oh, wake up, sir. You're missing," or something, his head rolls out.
Yeah.
First I'd scream. I'd go, "Ah!"
I don't know my own strength. I just
And then I'd
decapitated
just
him.
stand there and go,
Oh,
"They did it.
very good.
Very good."
Very good.
I would be angry if the craftsmanship weren't so good.
It's very
But
good.
if I pick it up and I see the human hair, I'm thinking, well, they really pulled out all the stops here. I am not a fool.
This brings us to Phase 2, breakout. After laying the dummies in their beds, the men went to work on busting out of their cells. All 4 of the men's cells had 5-inch by 9.5-inch ventilation grates in the back of their cells. Perhaps due to his time on maintenance, West may have known that the wall surrounding the grate was less than 6 inches thick, making it possible for each man to expand the hole in their cell to fit through. For months, each of the escapees had drilled small, closely spaced holes around the cover of the ventilation grates. For this, they used crude handmade tools, like spoons stolen from the kitchen, and a drill made from a vacuum cleaner motor. These holes made it possible for them to remove the entire small section of the wall around the air vents, which they then kept covered up with their musical instruments and with fake covers made of cardboard.
I'm also not that handy, so retrofitting a vacuum motor, turning it into a drill, I don't know if I'd be able to think of that.
I don't know. So they're essentially just perforating it.
Yeah, they're priming it by making little holes. They're making the wall a little bit weaker so that they could just push through this wall.
And this is out of view of the guard?
So it's not out of view, but this prison allowed an hour called, I think it was called happy hour, where the inmates
Everybody gets margaritas.
No one gets margaritas, but the inmates who played musical instruments were allowed to play their instruments during this hour.
What is this prison? Everybody talks, "Oh, the Rock, you don't want to go to the Rock."
That's true. It sounds like
The happy hour at the Rock is only 3 times a day.
It sounds like the prison from Paddington 2.
Don't forget your loot.
Yeah, under the cover of all this shitty music playing, they were probably able to do some drilling.
These holes allowed them to crawl through to a utility corridor located directly behind their cells that was typically left unguarded. From there, they were able to climb up to a hidden landing area directly above their cell block, where they had been working in secret for several months. Some or all of the escapees had been given permission at some point to do maintenance work on this landing area. In fact, to this day, you can still see where West actually completed part of the painting job. Apparently, West had even convinced the guards to allow him to hang blankets that concealed his work because it was sending dust cascading down to the ground level. In reality, he was actually using blankets to hide the work that was really being done up there. This concealed landing area became the escapees' secret workshop. They even built and used a primitive periscope to take turns as lookout. In the workshop, they were able to build the aforementioned dummies, tools, and other items they'd use to escape. It's worth noting that on the night of the escape, West never made it to this landing spot due to the fact that he was unable to break through the last portion of the wall around his ventilation grate. Consequently, West was left behind. From the landing, the ceiling was about 30 feet directly overhead, and the men were able to climb to the ceiling via the pipes and reach an air vent that they had previously pried off in preparation for their escape. Experts believe that a sound reportedly heard around 10:30 p.m. was the sound of the air vent cover being pushed off on the roof, and this marks the approximate time the escapees would have reached the roof. They then climbed down from the roof via a pipe next to the back of their cell block, climbed the 15-foot fence, and made their way to the north shore of the island, which brings us to the next phase. Phase 3, escaping the island. In their workshop, the inmates had built life preservers and a 6x14-foot rubber raft, all made from prison-issue raincoats. They'd gathered over 50 raincoats for the job, possibly stitching them together using sewing machines in the clothing or glove shops. They even vulcanized the rubber raincoats by holding the seams up to the heat from the steam pipes, an idea they'd gotten from a popular mechanics issue. The raft was inflated using a converted musical instrument, a concertina, ordered by Morris back in April.
Do you think every day for 50 days they just kept going, lost my raincoat again?
I mean, there was a
49th time in a row. Can you believe it?
a lot of raincoats.
I guess, yeah.
And I guess they weren't keeping inventory of them. I'm guessing that they
Clearly
got a
not.
fair amount of poop on them. They're like, all right, throw that in the trash. And
Yeah.
they were just walking by, taking them slow. Where did they oh, I guess in the workshop. That's
You know
where
what I
they stored.
find with government employees, they're always thrilled to waste the money
Yeah.
that they're like, hey, that's on the government's dime. So
Yeah.
if you're a prisoner and you're like, I lost a raincoat, they're probably like, yeah, hey, have more. I don't care. It's not mine.
Yeah, and
That's coming from Uncle Sam's pocket.
you're not
pal.
taking from the guard's personal stash
Yeah.
of raincoats.
Yeah.
Oh, but 50 does seem like an inordinate amount to gather.
They vulcanized them on the steamy pipes.
Off a popular mechanics issue.
I love it.
The plan was to sail across San Francisco Bay in their raft to Angel Island, about 2 miles north of Alcatraz Island. From there, they would sail again, this time across Raccoon Strait, about a half-mile wide, which would then bring them to the mainland. There, they would steal a car, as well as clothing, according to West, who would later inform the FBI about a good deal of the plan. Once the men were discovered missing, Alcatraz went into lockdown as a search began. Guards quickly found the secret workshop, the hole in the ceiling, and footprints on the roof and at the bottom of the pipe they climbed down. The FBI joined the case, as would the Coast Guard and Bureau of Prison Authorities, in what would be a wide-scale search. However, the escapees, as well as their raft, were never seen again. Even though we know the 3 men made it off of Alcatraz Island, what happened to the 3 men after that remains a mystery. That being said, let's get into the theories, of which there are only 2, that the men escaped and survived, or that they perished in the journey over to the mainland. Let's start with the latter. The bay's waters are known for being frigid, and there is a strong current that could have worked against the escapees. Experts point out that the trio's goal of taking the raft north to Angel Island would have been extremely difficult at this time, especially given that they had paddles but no rudder. Additionally, results of a reenactment of the escape carried out by Dutch scientists in a piece for PBS, in which they built a raft similar to the one the escapees used, found that 2 of the men would have to work to keep the raft inflated, leaving only 1 to paddle. The weather would have been about 47 degrees Fahrenheit when the men made it outside the prison. The water is said to have been 54 degrees Fahrenheit. If the raft had sunk or the men had gone overboard into the water, they would probably have only lasted 2 hours before starting to lose consciousness, according to author Jolene Babiak.
I tell you what, you ever looked out into the waters in that bay?
I've looked out to the waters at night in the ocean. It's scary.
But that bay in particular,
I
don't
can't.
like the look of it.
The ocean is scary in the daytime.
It's scary enough, but that bay, scarier than the ocean.
I can't speak to that.
It's rocky and it's cold.
The only time I've ever looked at that bay has been in a very fun context. I was watching a group of seals fight each other.
Oh, that's fun.
And it was really fun. They were slapping each other away, and then
Yeah.
one of them fell off. And
But imagine that if you're trying to escape and a seal hops up on your boat, starts slapping you like, you know?
Yeah,
That's not ideal.
I don't think that's ideal. It'd be cute, but it'd be like, come on, man, gotta escape. Very funny. Meet you back on the shore. We'll do
Yeah.
this again sometime.
Yeah.
On June 12th, bits of wood resembling a handmade paddle were found in the water near Angel Island. The pieces were identified as belonging to the escapees. On June 14th, bags made from raincoats were found halfway between Alcatraz and Angel Island. These bags contained irrefutable evidence that they had belonged to the escapees. Photos of the Anglins and their family, 9 pieces of paper with a list of people to contact on the outside, and a letter written to Clarence Anglin. Many point to these personal items as evidence that the journey was ill-fated, as these would have not been items easily given up. On June 15th, a homemade life vest was found floating near Cronkite Beach. A second life vest was discovered on June 22nd, no more than 100 yards from the eastern coast of Alcatraz Island. Its ties were still knotted. All three of the men would have set out with very little money, so the fact that the hordes of authorities on the case never found a shred of evidence of any thefts or holdups tied to Morris or the Anglins for food, clothing, or transportation made it seem unlikely that they made it to the mainland alive. The FBI states that they never found any credible evidence, either in the US or abroad, that the men lived. In mid-July 1962, about 6 weeks after the escape, a Norwegian shipping freighter, the SS Norefel, spotted a body in the ocean about 20 miles away from the Golden Gate Bridge. However, they did not call in the sighting and did not report it until fall, when they returned to San Francisco, and the body was never recovered.
Look, it's a dead guy.
Oh well.
I guess if it's a freighter, I mean, one, you should report it, but if it's a freighter, I can't imagine they can really stop.
Look,
a
I get
freighter.
not
Also, you know, time is money.
Yeah, sure, I get not stopping, but a little
Call it
phone
in.
call, a
Call
little
it
phone
in.
call. Like, hey, I
Yeah.
think I saw a dead body.
Yeah.
And because the body was never recovered, we can't tell if it's one of these three men.
Yeah.
So, you know, shit happens in the sea, I guess.
Though, there is plenty of credence to our second theory, that the escapees survived. Morins and the Anglin brothers had a raft to help them navigate the waters, which many people have successfully been able to swim before without the benefit of a raft or life jackets. A triathlon is held each year in which participants complete a 1.5-mile swim in the same waters around the same time of year that the escape occurred. Participants do say that the current, choppy waters, and wind are major factors to contend with. But according to Jeff Harp, a security analyst for CBS San Francisco who worked with the FBI for over 20 years and goes for swims in the San Francisco Bay, he doesn't know of any contestants in the triathlon who haven't been able to complete the swim. Furthermore, most of the bodies of those who drown in the bay will float after a few days, but despite extensive searches, the fugitives' bodies were never found. U.S. Marshal Michael Dyke has run a simulation with help from the Coast Guard that determined the escapees could have survived in the water for 2.5 hours at least if the raft plan failed. The same Dutch scientists who carried out the reenactment of the escape also created a computer model, which they presented in 2014, that could recreate the conditions in the water on the night of the escape. The model found that there was a very narrow window between 11:30 p.m. and midnight, during which the trio would have needed to launch their raft in order to have a chance of making it to land. And since the inmates may have made it to the roof by 10:30 p.m., this window seems possible. Though, even then, they would have had to let the currents carry them to Horseshoe Bay, northeast of the Golden Gate Bridge, rather than trying to reach Angel Island. The model also suggested that items left at the shoreline near Horseshoe Bay would drift back towards Angel Island, where some of the escapees' items were recovered once the tides reversed. And while the Dutch scientists' real-life recreation of the escape did not work, as they were unable to withstand the currents and bring the raft to land, they still got fairly close to Golden Gate Bridge in a little over an hour aboard the raft. One of the scientists conceded he still believes the escapees might have been able to pull it off given the rush of adrenaline and need to survive.
Also, one thing I'm going to point out here, I don't know how accurate this test is. If you have scientists doing the paddling themselves in the boat.
Oh, those fucking Poindexters.
I feel like maybe have some guys that are a little closer to the dudes who were escaping.
Yeah.
I guess I am generalizing that scientists are meek individuals, but I'm just saying that if these are inmates, hardened criminals that are trying to survive, I don't know if this is the best people for the job.
Yeah, I guess scientists could go to the gym, right?
I suppose.
Yeah, well, Chris Pratt in the Jurassic World film.
He's not a scientist. He's
I thought
also
he
a
was.
fictional character, but
His name is Owen Grady. Whoa there, Blue.
oh Jesus.
Everybody
Christ.
loves Blue, a great character.
David Widner, the nephew of the Anglin brothers, has said that his uncle Robert, one of John and Clarence's older brothers, confessed on his deathbed to his sisters, quote, that they didn't have to worry about their brothers, that he had been in touch with them and they were okay. end quote. Widner added that his grandmother, who would have been John and Clarence Anglin's mother, would sometimes receive roses with her son's signatures on the card following the 1962 escape. Multiple family members of John and Clarence Anglin have claimed over the years at family funerals that they have noticed mysterious women wearing veils and/or heavy makeup, which could have been the undercover Anglin brothers coming to pay their respects. In 2015, a History Channel show claimed that a photo taken of two men in Brazil 13 years after the escape depicted brothers John and Clarence Anglin alive. The photograph came from Fred Brizzi, a childhood friend of the Anglin brothers, who turned it over to the family sometime in the 1990s. Brizzi's story is that he was on a trip in Brazil when he happened to run into John and Clarence at a bar. Brizzi has since passed away. Many in the Anglin family have held onto the belief that John and Clarence survived the escape. They also believe the photo shows John and Clarence. An expert connected with the History Channel show concluded that the photo showed the Anglin brothers. The U.S. Marshal's Office investigated the claim. Their experts do not believe the photo depicts John and Clarence. However, they acknowledge that a solid determination isn't really possible given the age and wear to the photo and the fact that the subjects are wearing sunglasses.
Their execution of this plan was so impressive that I know it's technically not legal to do this, but just give them a pass.
Also, even let's say they survived the escape.
Yeah.
The fact that they didn't get into trouble for the next 50 years means jail worked for them.
Jail worked.
They received penance, and now they've stuck to the plan. They had a lot of conviction.
Yeah.
And you know what? They deserve to be free at that point.
I mean, prison truly should be about reforming the soul of a man.
And these folks, all they did was drink Caprinos in Brazil.
As for the aftermath of the escape, Alan West, the inmate left behind, cooperated with officials in the search, finishing serving his sentence across 3 different prisons following Alcatraz, and was released in 1967. But he remained free for only 1 year before landing himself concurrent sentences of 5 years, 1 to 3 years, and life for grand larceny and robbery. He died in 1978. Alcatraz shut down in March 1963, less than a year after the Anglin Morris escape. The FBI officially closed their case on the 1962 escape from Alcatraz on December 31st, 1979, over 15 years after their investigation began. However, they add, quote, "It's one mystery we'd all like to solve," end quote. The case is expected to remain open with federal marshals until either the fugitives are arrested, evidence of their deaths is found, or the fugitives reach 99 years of age. In the end, nobody truly knows if the enterprising bunch of Alcatraz escapees completed their journey, or if their midnight voyage was ill-fated. For now, the case remains unsolved.
I'll tell you what, on my 99th birthday, I'd be walking into the U.S. Marshal's office and just being like,
Your grandson wheels you in a wheelchair and you're just sunglasses on, just...
"You coppers!"
It's me. I was drinking Caprinos for the last 30 years. Suck it, coppers. And then you just die in your wheelchair. This week on BuzzFeed Unsolved, we discussed the bizarre collar bomb incident. Though some of the culprits in this one have seemingly been identified, the details in this one remain murky.
We sort of toil in murk, don't we?
I would say so. But like I said, we do know some of the main players, or at least we think we do. But then we don't, but then we do. I guess you have to stick around to find out.
Okay. I'm in.
On August 28, 2003, a phone call is made during lunchtime rush to Mamma Mia's Pizza, located at 5154 Peach Street. Tony Ditmo, the owner of Mamma Mia's, takes an order for 2 large sausage and pepperoni pizzas. Tony cannot understand the customer telling him the address, so he hands the phone over to his employee, Brian Wells. Wells is about 5 feet 3 inches, age 46, and balding on top. Wells takes down the address, 8631 Peach Street, and heads out south on Peach Street for what seems to be an ordinary delivery. And yet, roughly 2 hours later, Brian Wells is on live TV for robbing a bank. He is handcuffed and surrounded by state troopers in the parking lot of Eyeglass World with a bomb strapped to his neck. Wells tells the police that the bomb was fastened to him by a group of black men who ordered him to rob a bank. After about 30 minutes of gently trying to communicate his plight, Wells says to the police, quote, "Why is it nobody's trying to come get this thing off me? I don't have a lot of time. It's gonna go off. I'm not lying. Did you call my boss?" End quote. At about 3:18 p.m., the caller starts emitting a loud and rapid beeping noise, and then the bomb detonates and Wells falls backwards, slowly dying while medics and police are baffled in the background. Wells dies on the pavement. 2 minutes later, the bomb squad finally arrives.
You know, this is why I take issue anytime anyone, some trivial thing goes wrong in their day and they say,
That's true.
FML, bro. Look what happened to this man in 2 hours.
Yeah.
He woke up that day just going to sling some za. You know?
Yeah. He was a Zaw slinger.
Yeah.
And he got a little bit more than he thought he was going to get out of it.
One false move, suddenly his life is in tatters. That's horrible. We take so much for granted.
We do take so much for granted. You're right.
Let's
you're right,
appreciate each day. You never know when things are going to go south.
like getting a bomb strapped to your neck.
Right?
Collar bombs have only been known to be used by Colombian drug lords in turf wars, making the use of one in Erie, Pennsylvania, especially strange. Even more odd, police found several pages of instructions telling Wells how to rob the bank and remove his explosive collar. The notes were addressed to the quote, bomb hostage, end quote. The instructions were handwritten with illustrations. It appeared that Wells was telling the truth. He was sent on a hunt and his reward was his life. This case seemed pretty cut and dry, but as more details arose, it appeared that Wells may not have entirely been a victim.
Like I said, things aren't exactly what they seem in this case. Obviously, this man appears to be a victim, but
Appearances can be deceiving.
profound stuff. All right, let's move on.
To elucidate this possibility further, let's look into Wells. Wells's landlady and neighbor Linda Payne states that Wells was an ordinary Erie, Pennsylvania resident. Linda said, quote, he liked to help people. He used to get up, get his breakfast at McDonald's or somewhere, and a newspaper, come home and hang out until it was time to go to work. He was very shy. He took the hubcaps off of his car because they were too shiny. He was a perfect tenant, end quote. At the age of 46, Wells lived alone with 3 cats. He was a dedicated employee at Mamma Mia's Pizzeria. In the 10 years of his employment there, he had only called in late for work once, due to the death of one of his cats. Admittedly, none of this seems to scream high-profile bank thief. Let's jump into the timeline. The phone call to the pizzeria was made around 1:47 p.m. Wells agreed to take the delivery, even though it was the end of his shift. Wells would have arrived at 8631 Peach Street at about 2 p.m. During investigation, it was found that the delivery location was not a home, but a TV transmission tower site in a wooded area off of Peach Street. It was only reachable by a dirt road. The area was swept and they found footprints that matched Wells' footwear and the tire tracks of his Geo Metro. The area offered no clues as to how he had been lured there or what exactly happened when he arrived, but one thing is clear. It's during this time that Wells was outfitted with the collar bomb, because 20 minutes later, at roughly 2:20 p.m., Wells walked into the PNC Bank wearing the collar bomb. The bank was about 2 miles back up Peach Street, and Wells was wearing a t-shirt with the word Guess across the chest, a shirt he was not wearing before, and a shirt that relatives say was not his.
Like the brand?
No, the word, it was written on the shirt, Guess.
Oh, strange. My family, they don't know what shirts I have. I've got some I barely ever wear.
Yeah, that's true. I got shirts in there I haven't worn for years. Maybe we could do a little spring cleaning together.
Yeah.
No, that's
I
what
mean,
we
we
need
live
to do.
in separate
we could,
locations.
Yeah, we could do it like concurrently though.
FaceTime.
Yeah, it's true. We could do that.
Yeah.
This weekend?
Sure. Fun little Saturday.
Wells was instructed to, quote, go to the bank quietly, enter with the weapon you were given, avoid panicking the tellers or customers, use the weapon if anyone does not cooperate or attempts to leave the bank, end quote. John Seckel, a witness at the bank robbery, saw Wells walk into the bank with a shotgun disguised as a cane and what appeared to be a shoebox under his shirt. The bomb was already around Wells's neck at this point.
How do they expect this man not to scare anyone?
It was a cane. It looks like a cane.
I don't care how hard you try to disguise a shotgun as a cane.
He was kind of in an unwinnable situation because he
Right.
has this bomb.
Yeah.
and he has a shirt that has the word guess across it. So already he's drawing some weird looks.
Wells gave a bank teller a white envelope and spoke in a low voice. Wells's note to the bank teller said, quote, "Gather employees with access codes to vault and work fast to fill bag with $250,000. You have only 15 minutes, end quote. He then lifted his shirt and showed the teller his bomb, which the note confirmed. At one point, the teller yelled, "Audrey," the code for a robbery.
Hey, that's a pretty good code word.
No, it's not.
Yeah, it is. Because also you don't want the code word to spook everyone. So if you're sitting in a bank, waiting in line, and you see one of the tellers go, "Oh, Audrey," you go, "Oh, they're just, calling
I'm
for
pretty
Audrey."
sure that if I was
But if the banker goes, "Peacock's nest,"
One teller whispered to a customer to leave, and a group of people began to exit. The teller told Wells that there was no way to enter the vault at that time, and was only able to hand over $8,702. Seckel said about Wells, quote, "We walked right past him. He didn't bat an eye," end quote. Seckel said that Wells didn't appear scared or cocky. He was actually calm. Wells left a sealed note for the police along with his driver's license with the teller as he was told to do. A woman with a cell phone called 911, and about 3 minutes later, Wells walked out of the bank sucking on a dum-dum he took from the bank counter.
pretty fucking baller.
and took off in his car.
Who knows what state of mind he's in if he's like, "Oh, this is it.
I
Only
think-
got 8K.
I think it's fair to
Going out
say,
with a dum-dum in my gullet, baby."
I'm gonna imagine it would be pretty hard for me to remain calm during this situation.
I'd at least be sweating.
Yeah, but to be just cool as a cucumber?
It's pretty impressive.
Impressive or suspicious is probably the better word.
Police would later find pages of instructions in Wells's car. The first note read, quote, "Exit the bank with the money and go to the McDonald's restaurant. Get out of the car and go to the small sign reading drive-thru/open 24 hours in the flower bed. By the sign, there is a rock with a note taped to the bottom. It has your next instructions," end quote.
If you want someone to go to an inconspicuous location, don't go to a McDonald's flower bed.
That's true.
You loiter around a drive-thru, people start yelling at you.
Also, I
Not
mean,
that I've done that, but
it's also like very obvious to have a grown man rummaging through a flower
with
bed.
a giant collar, digging through the flower bed at a
He
McDonald's?
was asking for witnesses. Then again, he's only incriminating himself.
Yeah, I guess.
At the McDonald's, Wells collected a 2-page note that directed him to go up Peach Street to a wooded area several miles away. Shortly after, Wells was stopped by state troopers and handcuffed while he told them about the bomb. The troopers left him sitting on the ground shouting for help. They called the bomb squad as soon as they visually confirmed the device around his neck, and the rest is history. The notes directing Wells said, quote, "This powerful booby-trapped bomb can be removed only by following our instructions. Act now, think later, or you will die," end quote. Wells was warned that he would be watched by sentries, and that, quote, "If anyone follows or interferes, we may leave and allow timer to detonate or call cell phone detonator," end quote. If Wells did as he was instructed, which included driving around the city to gather passwords, clues, and keys that would disarm the bomb, Wells would end up with a combination to free himself from the bomb. However, it seemed based off of the instructions that Brian Wells never stood a chance. The plot assumed that he would be able to rob a bank of $250,000 and drive around in a Geo Metro with a collar bomb without interference from the police.
So he was kind of doomed from the start here.
Yeah, I was gonna say, it seems like the deck is kind of stacked against him.
What I think they wanted to do was they wanted him to go to the next point, make the handoff with the money, continue the scavenger hunt, and then they get rid of a loose end because the bomb goes off.
What's wrong with these people?
They're criminals, man.
Cops tried completing the hunt themselves hours after Wells had died, bouncing from clue to clue until eventually one of the clue locations came up empty. It seemed that whoever was executing this plan had called it off once the police interfered. One thing to note is that the instructions contained words like "we" and "us," making it appear that there were multiple conspirators. So now, let's get into the suspects.
Any one of these suspects could be part of the gang that carried out this crime.
I see, yes.
So one, maybe two, maybe more than that, may be responsible. But I will say at the end of this, at least one of these people was responsible.
Oh boy.
So for once, we will have some bit of closure.
Stick around. You got a good hook.
The first suspect is William A. Rothstein. Rothstein was a 6'6" hoarder who only wore dungarees and chest pouches filled with pens and notebooks. He spoke multiple languages, was an engineer, and a high school shop or introductory mechanics teacher. Less than a month after the collar bomb incident, Rothstein called the police and told the dispatcher, quote, at 8645 Peach Street in the garage, there is a frozen body. It's in the freezer, end quote. The address was Rothstein's home, and he claimed the body was there because he was storing it as a, quote, favor for a friend, end quote.
Big favor.
That's favor.
That's a big ask.
Yeah, I don't think I could call any of my friends and be like, hey man.
Remember that time they helped you move that couch?
Yeah.
Gonna call one in.
This is kind of like that, except instead of a couch, it's a dead person.
Yeah.
The friend in question was a woman named Marjorie Deal Armstrong. The body was 45-year-old James Roden, who was killed by his then-girlfriend Marjorie by shotgun blast while he was sleeping in her bedroom. This occurred on August 13th, about 6 weeks before Roden's body was reported. Rothstein had twice been engaged to Deal Armstrong, so given their history, he agreed to get rid of Marjorie's shotgun and store the body, but stated that he called the police once Marjorie suggested that Rothstein put the rest of Roden's body in an ice grinder.
Too much. Yep.
She stepped over the line, man. Either way, I love that this guy has this odd moral compass where it comes to like hiding the body's fine. The next step is chopping the body up. He can't do that.
I imagine her talking to him on the phone and just suggesting, like, while we're on the horn here, do you mind taking that body and putting it through the ice grinder? Then just a beat of silence, and he just kind of sighs.
And she knows she's gone too
like,
far.
oh shit.
Fuck, that was one.
What was I thinking?
Yeah. One too many.
Damn
it, Marjorie.
He was placed in custody hours later. He agreed to testify against Marjorie for immunity. He told the police that he had been feeling incredibly guilty and at one point was considering suicide. Police found a suicide note in a desk at his home. Interestingly, the note started with, quote, this has nothing to do with the Wells case, end quote, which truly is an odd thing to say, because from an outside perspective, it has no apparent relation.
My friend went to New Orleans recently, and she was like, oh, I'd love to buy a house here.
Yeah.
And one of the signs said for sale, and under that sign was a big red sign that said, not haunted.
Oh, that house is, I don't believe in ghosts, but I believe that house is haunted.
That's as weird to me as saying, this has nothing to do with this case that has nothing to do with this. Don't look into it at all.
The only link between Rothstein and Brian Wells seemed to be a coincidence. Rothstein's house was one of the only houses in the vicinity of Brian Wells' last pizza delivery in the woods. Rothstein's house was a mere 5-minute walk away. Additionally, the phone call that placed the order of pizzas was traced to a payphone on 8228 Peach Street at a Shell garage, only a half-mile away from Rothstein's home. Lorraine Blodgett, the manager of the convenience store at the Shell garage, stated Rothstein would often come in. Quote, he'd come in to buy newspapers and cookies. He'd sit outside in his car and have brunch, read the paper, end quote. Rothstein also used to make calls from the payphone. When you combine these circumstantial details with the fact that Rothstein brought up the Wells case unprovoked, it is undoubtedly suspicious and brings to the forefront Rothstein's mechanical prowess. Police searched his home and found power tools, welders, and quote, piles of old machinery, end quote. One NPR article states that Rothstein, quote, had the mechanical know-how to build the ingenious bomb that killed Wells, end quote. The collar was made up of, quote, a triple-bended metal collar with 4 keyholes and a 3-digit combination lock, and an iron box containing 2 6-inch pipe bombs loaded with double base smokeless powder. The hinged collar locked around Wells' neck like a giant handcuff, end quote. Investigators were able to tell that the device had been made using professional tools. In 2007, a Pennsylvania grand jury agreed that Rothstein had dumped over 1,000 pounds of evidence at a local landfill. But even if Rothstein did make the bomb, he didn't quite fit the profile of the mastermind of such a cruel operation. And thus, we discuss Marjorie Deal Armstrong, our second suspect. After Rothstein tipped off the police to the murder of James Roden, police entered Marjorie's home, which was a mess of dog feces, clothes, and fast food cartons. The police had to wear toxic hazard suits.
I hate all of this story, Ryan. The filth here is making my skin crawl.
This is the woman who had him store a body for her murdered boyfriend.
She must have been real pretty.
Or devious.
I mean, why are you 2 times proposing to a woman whose house is full of dog shit?
Maybe she just had a hook on him, you know? You just can't let go.
Every time he'd go out for a walk and smell a little dog shit, he'd be like, Marjorie.
Marjorie. The aroma.
The aroma of Marjorie.
Marjorie already had a reputation in Erie and had killed before. She admitted to having shot her boyfriend Robert Thomas in 1984, but she was acquitted because she stated that she was a victim of domestic abuse. Her first husband hung himself, and her second died after hitting his head at home on a coffee table.
I mean, she's obviously an evil person, but just to live a life that's so fraught with chaos sounds stressful.
But also, this person needs to be eradicated from the rest of normal society.
We should separate her.
Yeah, for sure. We should put her over there.
Find a spot for her where she can no longer get married to people.
Yeah, because it's obviously a fatal thing.
According to her former high school classmates, she was known for her intelligence, but over the years, it mingled with madness. She suffered from multiple mental illnesses, including bipolar disorder, paranoia, and narcissism. Her moods would swing, and she seemed unable to stop her rapid-fire speech. The local DA, Brad Falk, who had also attended school with Marjorie, described Marjorie as, quote, one of those folks that thinks she's smarter and slicker and brighter than everybody else, and that at the end of the day, she believes she'll win, or she'll prevail on anything that she does. It's the way she's been for 40 years, end quote. She seemed like the type that would make a bank heist more complicated than it needed to be, and she also seemed to be the type that would need to brag about her genius plan. The FBI made a profile of the collar bomber based on behavioral analysis. The collar bomber was profiled as a hoarder, comfortable with shop machines and power tools. The collar bomber also had access to work with these tools alone and took pride in their creations with dual purposes, a collar and a bomb and a cane and a shotgun. They had a violent past and a superiority complex. This profile fit the combination of Rothstein and Diehl Armstrong. She had a complex, a violent past, and he had shop skills. Though we aren't done with Diehl Armstrong, I'll now introduce our third suspect, a man named Kenneth Barnes. A witness came forward in 2005 that said Kenneth Barnes was involved. He was a former TV repairman turned crack dealer. Earlier in 2007, 27-year-old sex worker Jessica Hoopsick came forward saying she knew Brian Wells and had, quote, turned tricks, end quote, with him at the home of Kenneth Barnes. Hoopsick had left a message on Brian's answering machine and was a link between Brian and Diehl Armstrong. It turned out that Kenneth E. Barnes, who would supply Hoopsick with drugs, used to go fishing with Marjorie Diehl Armstrong.
Hence, connecting Barnes, Brian, and now Armstrong. So he knew these people.
What a town.
Barnes had spoken too freely about the collar bomb plan, and his brother-in-law turned him in while Barnes was already in jail for unrelated drug charges. Barnes and Diehl Armstrong had also been seen driving the wrong way on the highway near one of the locations of the search. Barnes said he would exchange information for a reduced sentence. Barnes also confirmed the FBI's belief that Diehl Armstrong was the mastermind. He stated that Diehl Armstrong needed the money because she wanted to pay Barnes to kill her father, who she believed was blowing through his fortune, which was money she expected to inherit. Barnes claimed that he was kept in the dark about most of the plan, but he had already corroborated with much of what the FBI had already heard. Other than Barnes, investigators had previously spent weeks with informants who said that Diehl Armstrong talked about plans of the bomb in intimate detail. A fellow inmate of Diehl Armstrong told authorities that Diehl Armstrong had admitted to killing her boyfriend James Roden because he was going to expose the bomb plot. The FBI met with Diehl Armstrong while she was serving time for the murder of James Roden. Diehl Armstrong promised to tell them everything if they would transfer her from Muncie State Penitentiary to Cambridge Springs, a minimum security prison closer to Erie. Diehl Armstrong insisted to the FBI that she had nothing to do with the collar bomb plot, but she did supply the kitchen timers used for the bomb and was within a mile of the bank robbery when it happened. She agreed to drive around Erie with the agents and showed them where she had been that day, linking her to several locations of the crime. Marjorie also admitted to the FBI that on the day Brian died, she had gone to the Shell station with her Jeep and bought $10 of gas. Rothstein and Barnes were also with her. Rothstein had used the payphone before Wells died, implying that Rothstein made the phone call to the pizzeria. She then claimed she would provide no further information without immunity, but she had already given away too much information. The FBI informed Diehl Armstrong that they had enough information to indict her.
Frankly, this is stressful, Ryan.
It's very stressful. So she gave him all these details. I was like, I'm not going to tell you anymore unless I get immunity. And they're like, you've told us
everything,
enough
right?
to indict you, you know.
Yeah.
So she effectively put herself behind bars,
Yeah.
which is kind of funny.
She claimed that Rothstein planned the whole thing, and more importantly, that Wells was in on the heist. Which brings us to our fourth and final suspect, Brian Wells.
Now that is surprising. Why would this man be in on it himself?
Well, what I'm about to break down may make you a little upset.
It's been a very upsetting day, Ryan.
Yes, it has been.
Let's hear more.
All right.
When looking at the known details of the timeline, two things come off as suspicious on the part of Wells. First, that Wells's demeanor was so calm during the robbery. And second, that it seems there was no evidence to back up Wells's story that he was attacked by a group of black men who locked him in the collar at gunpoint. Wells's calm throughout the situation troubled the police, who were never quite able to rule him out as a conspirator in his own death. In 2007, District Attorney Mary Beth Buchanan stated that she believes Wells was in on the plot along with Rothstein, Barnes, and Diehl Armstrong, who was the mastermind. The DA also believes that Diehl Armstrong and Barnes had planned on taking the money from Brian as soon as he had robbed the bank, but fled when they saw the cops and left Brian for dead. Because Wells allegedly never had a chance in his doomed scavenger hunt, DA Buchanan believes that Brian was part of the operation and given a collar bomb for an alibi. The collar would also ensure that Brian would stick to the plan, hand over the money, and if things went downhill, quote, he would not survive to be a witness against the other conspirators, end quote. Kenneth Barnes also claimed that Wells had been talking about the robbery about a month before it happened. According to the FBI affidavit, another witness had corroborated this. In July 2007, DA Buchanan announced the investigation was over, stating that Diehl Armstrong and Barnes were charged with carrying out the crime. The indictment also stated that Rothstein and Wells were conspirators. Based on information gathered over 4 years of over 1,000 interviews, Wells was charged with being in on the scheme from the beginning. Kenneth Barnes claims Wells was willing to help with the promise of money because he was in an expensive relationship with sex worker Jessica Hoopsick. According to the indictment completed in 2007, Wells thought the bomb was fake, and so he agreed to wear it. He was told it was meant to fool the cops. If he was caught, he could blame the threatening instructions. Barnes claims Wells only realized when he delivered the pizzas to the TV transmission tower that the bomb was real, and he was locked into the device at gunpoint when he tried to run away.
Why didn't he just assume it was fake still?
He was thinking probably of some cartoonish looking bomb. He gets there, it's professionally made. And he realizes, holy shit, this actually may be a real bomb. Maybe he even said something like, hey, that bomb looks pretty real, guys. And they all kind of didn't laugh when he started chuckling. He's like, uh-oh.
I guess you get what you pay for. If you're hanging out with people who all agree that maybe it's a good idea for you to wear a fake bomb and rob a bank, you can't be outraged when they put a real one on you.
District Attorney Buchanan said that over time, Wells had changed from a co-conspirator to an unwilling participant. Wells was double-crossed. To make things more confusing, a week later, the FBI concluded that the whole plot was a hoax. They believed that the bomb would have gone off if anyone had tried to remove it, and Wells would have died no matter what. Jim Fisher, a retired FBI agent, believes that Wells's death was part of the plan. Quote, it was a first-degree murder. This was an intentional premeditated homicide. Moreover, it was extremely cruel in the way the crime was executed, end quote. Despite the debate, Wells's family firmly believes that he was a victim. As Buchanan completed her statement of the investigation, one of Wells's sisters continuously yelled, liar. The official aftermath unfolded as follows. In February 2011, Marjorie Diehl Armstrong was sentenced to life in prison plus 30 years for her role in the heist. Diehl Armstrong claimed on her first day on the stand that she never knew Brian Wells and had never heard of him until he was on the news. Diehl Armstrong claimed that she is not the killer and that they are still out there. Diehl Armstrong died on April 4th, 2017 of natural causes in a Texas prison. Kenneth Barnes was sentenced in 2008 for, quote, conspiracy to commit armed bank robbery, using and carrying a firearm during a crime of violence, end quote. Barnes's 45-year sentence was reduced to 20 because he cooperated with authorities and admitted involvement. He's expected to be released in 2027. William Rothstein died of terminal cancer in the summer of 2004 before facing any charges. For what it's worth, retired FBI agent and criminal justice professor Jim Fisher believes that Rothstein was the true mastermind. Quote, the son of a bitch ended up winning. He died with all of the secrets. He died taking all the answers with him. He gets the last laugh in that sense. He escaped punishment. He escaped detection, end quote. And finally, Brian Wells, whose supposed involvement is what classifies this case as a cold case for many. Despite the official conclusion that Wells had been a part of the plan, many point out evidence against this idea, such as the fact that he let people at the bank leave during the robbery, and the note he left with the teller easily led the police to him. But some prosecutors say that was intentional. Wells's family and friends say he was, quote, 100% innocent, end quote, and there was no way he could have been involved. Others say Wells started out as a willing participant, but was double-crossed and became a victim. It appears clear that Diehl Armstrong, Rothstein, and Barnes were all involved to some extent, but whether or not Brian Wells' involvement goes beyond simply delivering a pizza at the wrong time remains murky. Although the official ruling is that Wells was in fact a participant in at least the heist, there are many who still classify his role in this heist as unsolved.
I could see how it's still a murky situation in terms of his involvement. I could buy that maybe he wasn't involved to begin with. I also feel like this Barnes character may be saying anything to get out of any kind of reduced sentence, right?
I don't like this Barnes guy one bit.
We're trusting the word of a lot of slippery people here. And I don't like the idea of a dead man being put on trial.
One thing for sure is, out of this collection of a-holes, he seems to be maybe the most...
Dude.
Less... I mean, they all seem like monsters. Or a collection
they're all actually murderers.
Yeah.
And he was a guy who tried to get some cash for a relationship at worst.
Just a pizza guy.
He also didn't murder anybody in the bank.
No. So, whether or not he was involved in this, he at least had some commendable qualities. And he loved those fucking cats, apparently.
That's true, he did love those cats.
I have faith in both of you. I think people will absolutely come after you if you find it.
It's fine. They could try and come after us. What the fuck is that?
What are you talking about?
Right there. Does that not look like a box? This week, on the season finale of BuzzFeed Unsolved, we're going to be doing something a little bit different. While what we're covering is not exactly a cold case nor a crime, it is in fact a mystery. You see, folks, this week we are going to be chasing the famed hidden treasure of Forrest Fenn, a treasure reportedly worth over $1 million, and a hunt that has literally claimed lives.
I want that treasure more than anything I've ever wanted in my life.
I want to jump into a giant pile of treasure like Scrooge McDuck.
Oh, hell yeah.
Let's do it.
Now 87 years old, Forrest Fenn, who has been called a real-life Indiana Jones by some, built his life and career on being a treasure hunter, finding, trading, and selling precious artifacts from around the world. And in 2010, Fenn announced in his memoir, The Thrill of the Chase, that he had hidden a literal treasure chest in the Rocky Mountains, full of valuable antiquities, worth over an estimated $1 million. Also included in the memoir is a poem containing 9 clues to the treasure's location, a treasure that we are now lucky enough to be tasked with finding. However, since we're going to be looking for this treasure on behalf of BuzzFeed, that could make legal ownership tricky if we find it. So we sat down with our legal team to sort things out.
So, Stu, I don't know if you know why you're here. I'll tell you right now. We are looking for the treasure of Forrest Fenn.
Got it.
And we want to make sure that once we find this treasure, it is ours, not BuzzFeed's.
You're doing this for BuzzFeed, right? It's kind of work for hire.
What are you
doing? Which means everything that you do for BuzzFeed, if you find this, it's kind of for BuzzFeed. So I would say it's BuzzFeed's. Problem is there's this legal article by John M. Kleberg, Esquire, Treasure Trove Law in the United States.
It's a very legal name.
And I'm sorry to report that he says on page 26, employees get to keep what they find when acting in their course of employment, unless their employer has a heightened legal obligation towards the customers, in which case the property goes to the employer. So I don't think we have any heightened legal obligation to customers as BuzzFeed, so I don't think you need to worry about us.
Well, then why bring it up? What do you?
I wanted to make you nervous.
Okay, all due respect here. What kind of fucking game are you
He's
playing?
not trying to
I'm on
push
your
an agenda.
side. I'm on your side.
Now that that's settled, let's briefly establish who Forrest Fenn is. After all, knowing the man is believed by treasure hunters to be an integral piece to finding Fenn's treasure. In 1950, Forrest Fenn joined the Air Force, and during his time as a fighter pilot, he had the ability to travel to historic sites such as Libya and the Sahara on his free time, where he would further expand his archaeological scavenging.
Is this cool, by the way, to do that?
I mean, Indiana Jones, even though he's a fictional character, went into places and just, grabbed things, put them in a museum.
He did put them in museums, though. Is this guy putting them in museums?
Eventually.
Oh, okay. All right.
Okay, there you go.
Yeah, whatever.
By 1973, Fenn had enough cash and inventory to open Fenn Galleries in Santa Fe, New Mexico, where Fenn lived. In addition to the items in the gallery, some of the pieces found in Fenn's personal collection include a mummified falcon from King Tut's tomb, Sitting Bull's peace pipe, and a spiritual centerpiece from Custer's Last Stand, appraised at $1.1 million.
A mummified falcon?
Yeah. Sitting Bull's pipe. These are significant pieces of history.
I just want a mummified falcon now. That's good.
I mean, I could see why you would be, a fan of a mummified falcon, because you yourself are a weirdo that collects dead bodies.
I don't collect
dead
dead bodies.
Being,
I don't.
butterflies encased
I
in
have
glass.
a butterfly in glass, and that's it. Perfectly normal to collect those things, especially if I put them all on my wall. It'll be
defensive.
It's going to be beautiful.
I hope I don't end up on that wall.
Keep running your mouth, maybe you will.
During the height of the gallery's 17 years of operation, Fenn had 16 people on staff and over $6 million each year in sales, with a laundry list of A-list celebrity clientele, including one Steven Spielberg.
I guess if they're his things now that he's stolen, and he can just do whatever he wants.
Okay,
with
you gotta stop saying he stole them.
Well, I mean, I guess technically we're gonna steal from him, so.
Well, not really, because he's offered this chase and he wants us to take it from him, so it's more like he's giving it to us rather than us stealing.
So we're gonna take the things that he stole.
We're gonna discover the things that he discovered.
In 1988, about a year after his father had passed away of cancer, Fenn was diagnosed with kidney cancer, with a prognosis that gave him a very slim chance to survive. However, Fenn beat the odds, and with his new stake at life, we arrive at Fenn's treasure hunt. When faced with death, Fenn was said to have thought about what he would leave behind and asked himself, what can one person do that might impact life 1,000 years from now? Fenn arrived at the idea of a treasure hunt that anybody could participate in. Fenn told NPR that he hid the box in the midst of the Great Recession to help brighten the spirits of those struggling, and in hopes that it might inspire people to explore the great outdoors and the land he loves so much. Fenn says that the chest is in an ornate, antique bronze lockbox of Romanesque design, which is 10 by 10 by 5 inches and weighs 42 pounds.
10 by 10 by 5 inches, that's not very big.
But it's bronze though, right? Copper? Bronze?
I'm just saying it will be fairly easy for us to walk right by it.
I've got good eyes.
Fenn claims that this list of items is inside the treasure chest. Ancient figurines, a 17th century Spanish ring, American Eagle gold coins, gold nuggets, a vial of gold dust, 2 gold discs, jewelry, including rubies, sapphires, and diamonds, and a 2,000-year-old fetish necklace, his own autobiography, and finally, his favorite turquoise bead bracelet found in a cliff dwelling near Mesa Verde. A bracelet which Forrest has requested to be returned upon discovery, which some speculate will transfer legal ownership of the rest of the treasure to the finder.
You know what's kind of actually scary to me is someone could have found it and just not said anything.
Ryan,
And
I
we-
want to find the treasure.
No,
I
but
really do.
no. We go up to
All
the box.
jokes
we go up
aside,
to the.
I want this
No, but if we
fucking
go up to the
treasure.
box, oh, could you imagine though, if we find this treasure? We open it up, and it's empty, and there's like a little Post-it note that's like, "Ha, too late." What would you do?
I would start punching a tree until my hands were just bone and blood. I'd be screaming.
But where does one start when looking for Fenn's treasure? As mentioned before, Fenn's memoir includes a 24-line poem that Fenn has said includes 9 hidden clues that lead directly to the treasure's location. The poem reads as follows: "As I have gone alone in there, and with my treasures bold, I can keep my secret where, and hint of riches new and old. Begin it where warm waters halt, and take it in the canyon down. Not far, but too far to walk. Put in below the home of Brown. From there, it's no place for the meek. The end is drawing ever nigh. There'll be no paddle up your creek, just heavy loads and water high. if you've been wise and found the blaze. Look quickly down, your quest to cease, but tarry scant with marvel gaze. Just take the chest and go in peace. So why is it that I must go and leave my trove for all to seek? The answers I already know. I've done it tired and now I'm weak. So hear me all and listen good. Your effort will be worth the cold. If you are brave and in the wood, I give you title to the gold. Where the 9 clues lie within the poem is up for debate, but for the most part, these highlighted sections are where many people believe the 9 clues to be. Clue 1, begin it where warm waters halt. Clue 2, take it in the canyon down, not far but too far to walk. Clue 3, put in below the home of Brown. Clue 4, no place for the meek. Clue 5, the end is drawing ever nigh. Clue 6, no paddle up your creek. Clue 7, just heavy loads and water high. Clue 8, if you've been wise and found the blaze. Look quickly down, your quest to cease. Clue 9, but tarry scant with marvel gaze. And there they are, 9 clues, simple. And yet, according to Fenn, over 65,000 people have tried to find the treasure to no avail.
So suddenly the odds seem a little bit slimmer if
Well-
we've got tens of thousands of people out there.
A couple people have got the starting location correct. They got the second clue correct, and they were within 200 feet of this treasure. So that just lets me know that if we get these first 2 clues right, we're pretty close.
Some people have even moved to the Rocky Mountain adjacent areas to commit to the hunt full time with no results. I, on the other hand, am attempting to find the treasure after only 1 month of hard research. What follows is my final day of research, where I'm joined by Shane to solidify my final theory.
You ready to find this treasure?
I'm ready to find this treasure.
When it comes to solving the hunt, Fenn has been famously and maddeningly reductive, saying that the only tools necessary to find the treasure are the poem, a map of the Rocky Mountains, and basic geographic knowledge. And to that degree, I have all 3.
I did bring my big map here, so.
You called this a big map, and
It looked bigger on my desk and online.
all right.
You know, we could I really just wanted to point at a big map like Walt Disney, which is the main reason why I did this. I retrofitted this back scratcher into a pointer.
Yes, you know you can point at it with your finger just as effectively.
No, but see,
Oh, well now who looks like an asshole?
me.
With clues and hints in hand, let's narrow down our search area. In addition to the clues in the poem, Fenn has also dropped helpful hints. Here's a couple of the notable ones. The treasure sits between 5,000 feet and 10,200 feet, so topographical maps are necessary. It's not in a graveyard, outhouse, mine, tunnel, or cave, nor is it associated with any structure. The treasure is located in either Montana, Wyoming, Colorado, or New Mexico, and is at least 8.25 miles north of Santa Fe, New Mexico. Of the 4 states listed by Fenn, I tend to lean towards New Mexico or Wyoming. Wyoming because a majority of Yellowstone National Park resides within that state, and Yellowstone was a place where Fenn spent his formative years camping with his father. If Fenn were to hide the treasure in a place that had special meaning to him, Yellowstone would make sense. However, if the treasure chest was found in Yellowstone, or any national park for that matter, it's possible that it could be considered abandoned property. Here's a quote from Tim Reed, Chief Ranger at Yellowstone. Quote, "It's not finders keepers. You would have to turn it in and go through a governmental procedure to lay claim to it." End quote. So for me, Yellowstone is out.
Yellowstone seems a little mainstream for him nowadays, though. That place might as well be a Dave & Buster's, considering how
true.
populated it is. You would think you want people to go more off the beaten path into these strange areas where they haven't been.
If I were to hide a chest worth over $1 million, I would want to do so in a place near my house so I could check on it. And Fenn lives in Santa Fe, New Mexico.
You don't get clue 1 right, you're basically fucked. I've been looking at the book, I've been looking at the boards, I've been looking at other people's theories.
It's a little bit like a needle in a haystack.
He had spread someone's ashes on Taos Mountain. It's weird, every time you think you're chipping away at it, there's another question. Come on, show me a line right there. Fuck you. I mean, from what I've gathered, I don't think it's buried. Because
you think
there's legality issues.
Do you think it's camouflaged in any way?
I think it's camouflage, I think it's above ground. Pretty low.
That's shit.
We're probably gonna cut to some overproduced montage now of us continuing to search.
Great.
Is that the time to do that now?
I think so.
I'm starting to lose it.
After locking ourselves in a room for the final 24 hours of my month-long journey of research, we came up with 2 workable theories, both in New Mexico. And with that, we begin our journey.
All right, we're in the airport. We're about to embark on a great quest.
Smells like treasure.
I have faith in both of you. I think people will absolutely come after you if you find it, but fight the good fight.
It's fine. They could try and come after us. Landed in Albuquerque.
Time to find the treasure.
Not yet. That'll come soon. Though.
Oh, okay.
We'll probably eat and then find the
And
treasure.
then we'll find the treasure.
Right now we are on our way to Red River from Albuquerque. We're gonna get to our hotel, and in the morning, we're gonna hit that treasure track hard.
It's treasure hunting day. I feel kind of stupid.
All right, you ready to go? I got one last piece here. Dress for the job you want, right?
Yeah.
Well, don't laugh. You look like Owen Grady from Jurassic World. You happy with that look?
I'm happy with my look. Yeah.
Are you?
Yeah, I'm actually pretty happy with yours too.
Just think, when they take our picture for the paper, this is what we're gonna be wearing. So right now we're traveling to the location of the first clue. Begin it where warm waters halt.
Fenn has said that the most important clue is where warm waters halt, since it provides a starting point, and both of my theories revolve around the same solution to that first clue. Like many on the web, I've landed on warm waters referring to fishing waters in New Mexico due to Forrest being an avid fisherman. One of the types of fish Fenn has specifically mentioned fishing for is trout, and trout have a proclivity for cold water, which led me to the New Mexico Fishing Guidelines, which actually contains the phrase warm waters and lists various rivers, lakes, and streams that are designated as warm waters. More importantly, these guidelines pinpoint where these various warm waters turn into trout waters, aka cold waters. In other words, these guidelines give exact coordinates to where warm water halts and turns into cold water. From this list of coordinates, I landed on a specific point in Red River as my solve for warm waters halt and our starting point for both of my theories.
Now, this area I'm talking about over here, there's a little river called Red River. I guess it's not that little, but it's a river. I think that might be the starting location. What do you think is gonna happen if we see fellow treasure hunters? Are you ready for a tussle?
I got a knife.
I got these 2 bad boys right here.
Liberty and justice.
Locked and loaded. Destiny awaits us.
We're gonna look back on one today and laugh at some point.
I'm already laughing. They don't even know.
They don't know who they just. They'll be telling stories about this too. Oh, we saw those guys. The rich ones? Yeah.
Yeah.
I can hear the rushing of waters.
Ah, yes, here we are, right here. That's where warm waters halt, and that's where we begin.
So where do we go from here?
Like I said before, both of my theories have the same solution to clue 1 and thus the same starting point. Clue 2 is take it in the canyon down. Not far, but too far to walk.
Not far, but too far to walk. I think that means you have to drive and take it in the canyon down.
Yep.
So you have a starting point, you're gonna be moving down into the canyon. I assume that means move south.
Moving down from where I've identified warm water halting, you reach Butcher Knife Canyon, and nestled below that is Moreno Creek. Clue 3, put in below the home of Brown.
This road leads to something called Moreno Creek. You know what Moreno is in Spanish?
Brown.
Brown, baby.
Therefore, my home of Brown is Moreno Creek. Moreno Creek is easily accessible by the 38 highway, where the 80-year-old Fenn could have parked his car. Fenn allegedly replied to an inquiring email stating that he walked, quote, less than a few miles, end quote.
Now, Forrest said that he hid this treasure in one afternoon.
And this is an 80-year-old man.
This is an 80-year-old man, which means even though it's not near a human trail per se, it definitely is near a spot where you could park a car.
Yeah.
All right, so right now we are following the creek of our first solve, Moreno Creek, for Home of Brown. Right now we're looking for parts of that creek that are not private property, and that's where we could park our car. I thought we'd get a shot of actually getting our boots on the ground, but
Right now we've just been driving.
we've been driving and just following the fence.
And I don't think Forrest Fenn imagined treasure hunters just
Driving.
cruising around in a luxury SUV.
No.
It's not uncommon to hear stories of terrain seeming different in person as opposed to online or on maps. In the case of this first theory, the entire area of my solve turned out to be within private property.
What we gotta do is we gotta backtrack to where warm water halts, and then we'll take it in the canyon down in a different direction to our next solve, which I believe to be the true solve, at least according to my research. Granted, what are we but novices in Forrest Fenn's treasure hunt?
Full
We've only-
disclosure, we are not good at this.
That being said, I am confident in this next solve. And now we're going to the location of my second theory.
And you've got more of a good feeling about this.
I got a good feeling about this one because it fits the poem, especially in the latter parts of it.
Clue 2. Take it in the canyon down. Not far, but too far to walk. Starting at Red River, we take it in the canyon down using the 578 highway.
You really got this. You look like Indy driving a tank.
Clue 3. Put in below the home of Brown. After driving for a couple miles, we arrive at Bear Creek, the home of Brown.
So it's starting to come together. You see why I think the clues fit this geography? I'm not crazy. I'm a little crazy, but I'm not totally crazy. Right now we are trying to find Bear Creek. He did mention that the trail would be obscure, and this is one of the more obscure trails in this area, Bear Creek.
Moving to clue 4. No place for the meek. This is admittedly a weak fit, but I interpret this as a reference to the altitude. Clue 5. The end is drawing ever nigh.
Nigh has another meaning. That could mean on the left, you know.
Hey man.
Clue 6. There will be no paddle up your creek. I interpret this as meaning a very strong creek. Which brings us to clue 7. Heavy loads and water high. I believe this to be in reference to a waterfall. Sure enough, maps of Bear Creek list a waterfall.
So we parked along the road and hiked into the forest to hit the roundabout to get to the creek. We're in the thick of it now.
This is what it's all about. This is what Forrest wanted us to be doing, you know? Ryan, this is bear country.
Yeah, I'm trying to keep that out of my mind.
What would happen if a bear approached you right now?
I don't even want to think about that. I'd probably piss myself.
Find a different kind of gold out in these hills. It's dense, I'll tell you that. I mean, no 80-year-old man is climbing.
No,
Oh, I
no
see the
80-year-old
fence
man's
up.
climbing this.
Although we were able to get into the woods, the terrain, in my opinion, proved to be too treacherous for that of an 80-year-old man, and Bear Creek seemed out of reach.
Well, looks like that's a dead end.
And thus, we hit a wall. Both of our theories were now up in smoke, and it seemed our maiden voyage to New Mexico was going to end empty-handed, mired in disillusionment. But in a final act of desperation, we drove to a nearby house to gather intel on another way to find Bear Creek. But what we got instead was another theory.
We just investigated Bear Creek. We talked to a local because we couldn't get into it. We talked to her, and as we were talking to her, she recommended other hikes that were down the road. She's like, there is this one road down, down the way. It's a little dirt road, and there is a falls there. It's right near, you can't miss it. It's right near the beaver ponds. And Shane and I, our eyes.
They snapped open.
Home of Brown.
Home of Brown. But I'm fired up again, and I got a case of treasure fever.
That's right. We're still in the fucking ball game.
We're gonna get this treasure.
Our confidence renewed, we quickly set out for our impromptu Theory 3, Middle Fork Creek, which like the other two theories, was south of where warm water halts, had a home of Brown in the form of beaver dams, and like Theory 2, sported a waterfall.
Beaver, these are beaver ponds.
Beavers.
These are fucking beaver ponds if I've ever seen them. They might not be, but they look like,
These could classify as beaver ponds, I would say.
you know
And
what?
they said they'd be to the left.
Home of Brown.
Home of Brown.
Home of Brown.
By Jiminy, I think we've done it.
Sometimes things happen for a reason, and this random, unpredictable interaction with a friendly local may have just helped us on the discovery of a lifetime.
Trailhead parking, boom.
Yes.
Well, we are following this little creek here. And I will say, it's shallow. There will be no paddle up this creek.
No, sir.
I don't think we have to get into a boat because he didn't say anything about this being perilous. I don't think an 80-year-old man is about to hop in a canoe.
Yeah.
I do think it is by water, though. He said the treasure itself is wet, which
wet?
means I don't think it's in water, because he said it's not in water, it's not underwater.
Near a
but it's
water,
near
a
water.
fall, a brook.
A fall, possibly. The question is, when have we found it? We'll have to reach a waterfall, and from there we'll have to look for the blaze.
Clue 8. If you've been wise and found the blaze, look quickly down your quest to cease. I'm of the mindset that a blaze is something that will become apparent when you hit the ground, and not something you can find online. Fenn has also suggested that the blaze could be the color white.
So we've just parked at the trailhead. Now we're gonna follow the river. I believe we are now in let's keep our eyes open territory. The chest could be anywhere now, it seems like. Let's just follow the water. Keep your eyes peeled though, because if we don't find a waterfall, we should keep our eyes out for the blaze. There has been a handful of people that apparently have gotten as close as 200 feet, and they have not seen this blaze, which to me means maybe it's not like a big rock formation, because how do you miss that? God, it's a 10-inch box too. That's just,
You're for sure it's obscured.
yep. And I don't think it's buried either. It just seems so ridiculously impossible finding a needle in the biggest haystack. Also keep in mind the distance of how long we're walking. He did it in one trip, and it was probably a couple miles. All right, so we now have a visual on the first, I guess you could call that waterfall. It's
Yeah.
a small little fall.
I mean, the water is high, higher than a bathtub.
Heavy loads, water high. If you've been wise and found the blaze, look quickly down your quest to cease, but tarry scant with marvel gaze.
Clue 9. Tarry scant and marvel gaze. Fenn has mentioned the location of the treasure is where he'd like to be laid to rest, so I'd imagine it would be a picturesque location.
So, would this be a place where an old man would want to be laid to rest?
You know what? I gotta be honest. I think so. I wouldn't mind being buried here. If I die here right now, I don't want you to take me home. I want you to leave my body to rot.
I won't do that,
Why?
because it's fucking weird.
The other thing about this that's interesting, heavy loads, you've got large rocks. You've got a lot of fallen timber.
Yeah. Well, where's the blaze?
Blaze.
He's mentioned it's white. It's
And
not
what about this
definitive
white
that it's
rock
white.
here? This looks brighter than all the other rocks.
Nope. Seeing anything white?
What about that rock over there? See that? Cool move.
Slippery. I don't see anything under it.
All right. Well, that's some thunder.
Oh, look at this. It's like a
What is that?
crystal.
Oh, that's incredible.
Beautiful.
That is a blaze.
Look quickly down your quest to cease. What the fuck is that?
What's what?
That right there. Look, there's a box.
What do you mean there's a box?
Right there. Look. Is that a box or just a very square rock? Right here. Look, where my finger's pointing.
What are you talking about?
Right fucking there.
There's a lot of shrubbage.
Right there. Look. Does that not look like a box?
Oh, it kind of does.
Right?
Yeah.
Holy shit.
That may just be a...
That
don't know.
square? That is a very, very square rock. God fucking damn it.
Oh, ain't that a motherfucker?
It was under a blaze. There was a pine tree right there, and it was by the fucking creek. Square rocks. Why did it have to be square rocks?
You got it.
Well, we're still poor. Let's go back up. Frankly, we've been walking up a very steep grade for the last, I don't know, 30 minutes. This would be the end of the line for an old man.
He is a strong old man.
But
though,
a
right?
40-pound, 50-pound chest.
Oh, right. That's a lot.
Granted, this does happen to align with a flower bed of white flowers. So, yeah, I
That
don't
could
know.
be a very large blaze. I don't know if these flowers were here 7 years ago, but. So we're gonna dive on it. Whoa, he's taking his jacket off,
Might
folks.
as well.
Watch out, ladies.
Yeah, sure.
Arcadia Jones is on the scene.
Yeah, I am on the scene.
Yeah,
One last
I guess we'll
hurrah.
just fucking dive into this.
Well, kick around for a chest.
This feels dangerous, I gotta be honest. I think we may just have to come to terms with the fact that we're not going home with treasure.
Is that then? Are the gold boys calling it? We're calling it quits?
I think that's that. Though, full disclosure, if we did happen to find the treasure here, or earlier along this trail, we wouldn't have told you.
That's true. If we found the treasure, the last thing we would do is publicize it on the internet. So
This would all be just a ruse. Yeah, let's hike to the end of the trail.
Yeah.
Maybe pretend we'll search one last place.
let's film a fake outro to make it look like we're giving up. Yeah, I'm really upset that we didn't find the treasure. It's a big bummer. I don't know how I'm gonna return to my friends and family empty-handed. I don't know whether or not we found the Forrest Fenn treasure will remain.
Unsolved.
Yeah, we did it. I think they bought it.
Yeah.
They bought it.
What are you gonna buy with all your fucking gold?
We still rolling?
Oh, we're still rolling?
Whether or not we found the treasure, at the very least, we accomplished Fenn's goal for us of getting out and exploring the outdoors. This journey has been challenging both physically and mentally, and the quest itself was fulfilling. Whether or not Forrest Fenn's treasure is tangible, or in fact, the gift of knowledge remains up for debate. Will Forrest Fenn enter the dirt to join his famed treasure, forever undiscovered? Does the treasure even exist? For now, the mystery persists and will remain unsolved.
Another championship run for the Ghoul Boys. Gold Boys.
The gold boys, the ghoul boys. I don't know.
Golden Ghoul Boys.
We have so many aliases at this point, I can't keep track of them.
You know, maybe nature was our treasure. This experience together was our treasure.
I had a good time.
Yeah.
Thought it was a lot of fun.
I'm proud of us.
Mission accomplished.
We committed.
Yeah.
You could take that to the bank, Fenners.
Yeah, well, I was gonna call them pieces of shit,
Yeah,
but I probably
you
shouldn't.
should call them that.
I admire you.
We tried.
We
did
tried
try.
our best.
We tried.
You're welcome to make fun of us
just-
on your little subreddits.
Yeah, make fun of us all you want. Despite what these outfits suggest, we did take this very seriously.
Yeah.
For a month.
This week on BuzzFeed Unsolved, we investigate the suspicious death of Alexander Litvinenko, an ex-Russian spy who died on UK soil following a meeting with former KGB contacts. There's a lot of political intrigue to unpack in this tantalizing and kind of tragic caper, so,
What is tantalizing? Are you tantalized?
I mean, it's just intriguing.
Anytime I hear tantalized, I just imagine like, yes. Is that tantalizing?
I think it's more like you're intrigued. It's very unique.
Okay, good. Glad we've established that.
Cool.
Who was the ill-fated Alexander Litvinenko? Born in Russia, Litvinenko began working for the KGB in the 1980s and eventually became a lieutenant colonel after the KGB became the FSB, the Counterintelligence and Internal Security Service in Russia. There, he is believed to have had a falling out over FSB corruption with his ultimate superior, Vladimir Putin. Litvinenko also wrote a book called Blowing Up Russia, Terror from Within after leaving the service. In the book, he asserts that in 1999, FSB agents bombed apartment blocks in Moscow and other cities. These bombings were previously said to have been carried out by Chechen separatists, but in the book, Litvinenko suggested that these bombings were used as a justification for the Russian invasion of Chechnya for the second time.
So he's burning all his bridges,
Yeah.
which is a gutsy choice if your previous employer was the KGB.
Well, you gotta imagine that if you know all this intel and it's bad intel, you would have a considerable amount of guilt if you are a good person. Mm-hmm. And he strikes me as a good guy. I mean, he doesn't care what happens to him, obviously.
Maybe he's trying to clear his conscience a bit.
Yeah, but you know by clearing your conscience, that's gonna come with some consequences for you.
Heavy price to pay.
In 2000, citing persecution, Litvinenko fled to the UK, where he was granted asylum. Once in the UK, he did not conceal his loathing for Russia's leader, criticizing Putin publicly. Litvinenko was part of a circle of exiled Russian critics, and in 2003, Litvinenko was recruited by MI6. He provided information about senior figures in the Kremlin and their connections to organized crime in Russia, while also possessing information about the Russian mafia's work in Spain. Litvinenko informed authorities he had faced harassment and death threats essentially since he fled to the UK. For example, Major Andrei Pankin, a former colleague, reportedly contacted him in 2001 saying, quote, "You will either be brought back in a body bag to Russia or pushed in front of a train," end quote. Litvinenko is believed to have become a British citizen in 2006, the same year he mysteriously died.
At this point, I would turn my house into a full-blown panic room.
Yeah, but is
a
that
panic house?
Is that living?
That'd be a good sequel. No, it is living technically.
I mean,
it's better than being dead,
Is it? You mean you're essentially dead at that point? You're dead to the world.
but not to yourself.
Yeah, but you're just living in a panic room for the rest of your life. That doesn't seem
You
fun.
can still FaceTime with people, watch a funny movie.
I'd rather die.
You'd rather die than
Yeah.
sit around eating popcorn and watching funny movies?
I guess I'm a bit of an extrovert, I would say. So if I had to be forced to live in this fortress of solitude and
Invite your
security,
friends over.
Yeah, but they probably wouldn't want to come because they know, oh, we can't go over there because we'll be marked 10.
Yeah, that's true.
On November 1st, 2006, Litvinenko had tea at the Millennium Hotel in central London with Andrei Lugovoy and Dmitry Koftin, two former Russian agents. It's said that Litvinenko had been planning to travel to Spain with Lugovoy and that he was investigating the Russian mafia's connections to Spain. It's worth noting that Litvinenko had also been investigating the murder of Anna Polakhovskaya, a Russian journalist who, prior to being shot at her apartment block in Moscow the month before, had received death threats. After this meeting with Lugovoy and Koftin, Litvinenko became sick and vomited all night. He was admitted to a London hospital 3 days later, where his condition worsened. When BBC Russian service interviewed Litvinenko on November 11th, Litvinenko said that he was the victim of a, quote, serious poisoning, end quote, and that he was in, quote, very bad shape, end quote. On November 23rd, 2006, Litvinenko died with his family beside him. This was 3 weeks after his meeting with Lugovoy and Koftin. Doctors were not able to diagnose Litvinenko's conditions while he was hospitalized, but in the hours before his death, test results confirmed tremendously high levels of the substance polonium-210, a radioactive isotope in his body, finally revealing the cause of his sickness. Dr. Nathaniel Carey, a Home Office forensic pathologist, later said of the postmortem examination, quote, "It has been described as the most dangerous postmortem examination ever undertaken in the Western world, and I think that is probably right," end quote.
Litvinenko, this entire time that he was at the hospital, had been saying to reporters, I think I've been poisoned
Yeah.
by these two guys specifically. So if that's the case, if I'm a doctor, I'm now looking for every possible source of poisoning that I can.
Yeah.
And they found it hours before his death. That's 3 weeks.
I'd be pretty pissed.
Yeah, it's not the kind of buzzer beater you want.
No. We've cracked it. Bye.
But where did this poisonous polonium come from? Let's jump in to the theories. The first theory we'll dig into today pertains to the official conclusions of the Litvinenko Inquiry Report, compiled by the chairman of the inquiry, Sir Robert Owen, published on January 21st, 2016, which explains that there is a great deal of evidence implicating Andrei Lugovoy and Dmitry Koftin and their meeting with Litvinenko at the Millennium Hotel's Pine Bar. Forensic evidence indicated high levels of polonium-210 contamination at the Pine Bar, with the greatest polonium-210 readings coming from the inside of one of the teapots and the table where Litvinenko was sitting. None of the other places Litvinenko went that day had any comparable level of contamination. Sir Owen writes, quote, "I am sure that Mr. Lugovoy and Mr. Koftin placed the polonium-210 in the teapot at the Pine Bar on November 1st, 2006. I am also sure that they did this with the intention of poisoning Mr. Litvinenko," end quote. Sir Owen explains that he's certain that they intended to kill Litvinenko and were aware they were using a deadly substance, not, quote, a truth drug or a sleeping draft, end quote. However, he does not believe they understood exactly what kind of substance they were using, and he is sure Lugovoy and Koftin were poisoning Litvinenko on the orders of someone else. In the report, Owen says that it's likely Litvinenko was poisoned at the FSB's direction, which at the time was led by Nikolai Patrushev. Furthermore, Sir Owen was also certain Lugovoy and Koftin attempted to poison Litvinenko with polonium-210 earlier on October 16, 2006.
I'm an adult, but sometimes
Why did you start your sentence off with that?
I am an adult.
You said it in a weird way with a weird cadence,
I am an adult,
like you don't believe it.
but sometimes I have the mind of a child. And I think you can relate to that.
Yeah, sure.
Because the whole time I'm hearing this, I don't understand how radiation poisoning works. I don't know what you're envisioning here. I am envisioning essentially a green glow stick.
Yeah, me too. Or you're envisioning like the case that Doc Brown opens in Back to the Future, and he has to put
Just glowing green,
Yeah,
like
yeah.
them pouring the tea,
Like a
and
moon
just
rock.
a glowing green tea that he's drinking. Like,
Yeah, I imagine it's not like that.
No, probably not.
No, it's probably a little bit more.
Or like the
discreet.
ooze from Turtles 2.
Don't think it's like that either. I think it's a little more discreet. Otherwise, he would have been like, "Oh, this tea looks a little odd."
This tea looks like ooze.
It's also neon, so maybe we shouldn't drink it.
Yeah. What is this, ooze long tea? Okay, you can keep going.
I don't think you're done laughing at your own joke. You want some more time?
No,
Do you need some oozlong tea yourself? So stupid.
Yeah, funny when you say it.
Dumb. All right. Well,
You didn't poison this, did you?
I wish I did now.
There is plenty of evidence that supports Sir Owen's conclusions. Lugovoy and Koftin left traces of polonium all over their paths, on restaurant tables, in planes, even in an erotic nightclub. In fact, during the investigation, approximately 700 people had to be tested for radioactive poisoning, though no one proved seriously sick. The inquiry report portrays Lugovoy and Koftin as careless and bumbling, allowing the polonium to be, quote, splashed around in hotel bathrooms and mopped up with hotel towels that were then left in the hotel, end quote. There is also support for the idea that Lugovoy and Koftin weren't aware of the nature of the poison, given that Lugovoy also told his 8-year-old son to shake hands with Litvinenko after he had consumed the poison.
They clearly did not understand the nature of radiation,
No.
which is funny because they were given the job to administer radiation.
Yeah. Maybe that's why they were. I feel like anyone who did understand the nature of radiation may say, I'm good.
This also makes me feel like obviously Litvinenko and Putin had kind of disagreements in the past, but I bet you Litvinenko was kind of far down on his list in terms of people he wants to whack.
Yes.
So he didn't exactly send out the A squad to go kill this guy. He was like,
Are we going to be poisoned for doing this episode?
Possibly.
I'm a little concerned.
yeah, I think we're gonna die.
Okay.
Yeah.
I mean, we will.
We're gonna die eventually.
Yeah.
You maybe sooner than others, but
I'd like to live
I'm sure you would.
forever.
Okay, no, that's not gonna happen.
You've never wanted to just see the universe just,
Implode?
yeah.
No, because I'm not really an anarchist.
You're just there. No, it's not even anarchy because it's not even disorder. It's just nothing.
The inquiry report also references a suspicious phone call Koftin made to a cook he knew. Koftin was reportedly trying to find a cook that would put, quote, a very expensive poison, end quote, in food or a beverage that Litvinenko would consume. On November 1st at 11:33 a.m., Koftin tried to reach the cook, who was not able to help him. Lugovoy called Litvinenko only 8 minutes later to arrange their meeting at the Millennium Hotel later that day. The report explains, quote, once it had become apparent to Mr. Lugovoy and Mr. Koftin that they would not get any help from the cook, at least not in the short term, they decided to make another attempt to poison Mr. Litvinenko themselves. Their plan, which they subsequently put into effect, was to make this attempt in the Pine Bar of the Millennium Hotel, end quote. The report concludes by saying, quote, the FSB operation to kill Mr. Litvinenko was probably approved by Mr. Patrushev and also by President Putin, end quote. It seems secret evidence revealed in closed hearings of the inquiry contributed to the report's conclusion that Putin and Patrushev probably approved the killing. Who within the Russian state would have had a reason to murder Litvinenko? Well, for starters, he was thought of as a traitor by the FSB. After all, he had claimed the FSB was responsible for the 1999 apartment bombings in Russia that contributed to the Chechen War. It was also known that Litvinenko was working for MI6 and rubbed shoulders with Russian critics Boris Berezovsky and Akhmed Zakayev, a Chechen leader living in exile. The report also noted that the tension between Litvinenko and Putin was personal. In July 2006, Litvinenko publicly described Putin as a pedophile who destroyed tapes of himself having sex with underage boys. And shortly before he died, Litvinenko accused Putin of being behind Anna Politkovskaya's murder in October 2006. The inquiry report notes that Putin and the Kremlin have since rewarded Lugovoy a medal for, quote, services to the fatherland, end quote.
So this is one of those unsolved cases that we sometimes have where it's like, yeah, you sort of get what's going on here.
You said I sort of get where the wind is traveling here.
You get it.
Yeah. Also, it doesn't look good when you award one of the main suspects a medal for services to the fatherland.
I mean, what else did he do? Did he do anything else notable?
I don't know. He sure,
Didn't, like, build a nice gazebo somewhere or
he
something?
sure made London into his fucking circus.
Yeah.
Just radiation everywhere,
Yeesh.
spilling out of his pockets when he's walking down the street. Unbelievable.
Lugovoy reportedly claimed that MI6 had framed him. According to the inquiry report, Lugovoy protested saying, quote, I was framed. I suspect this was some British intelligence operation involving Litvinenko and possibly Berezovsky that went wrong. I was contaminated by Litvinenko or someone else, not the other way around. I think polonium was planted on us and left in places we visited to frame us. End quote. However, the inquiry report explains that a setup like Lugovoy was describing would have required the conspirators to contaminate a variety of places around London with a radioactive substance, putting an enormous amount of people in danger. Owen goes on to say, quote, I will simply say that in all the oral evidence that I have heard during this process, in all the many thousands of pages of documents that I have seen, I have not come across anything that would even begin to substantiate the claims of a setup made by Mr. Lugovoy, end quote.
Yeah, if this was something that was orchestrated by the British government, you
That's
don't
a
think
lot.
they'd put this many British citizens in fucking, danger.
Yeah. That's all they got, you know? They're
Yeah.
they're that little island out there.
Yeah.
It's a big island, but they're not poisoning their own folks.
Yeah, I mean, I think if they wanted these two guys gone, there's probably a better, more discreet way to do it.
Moreover, Litvinenko's death seemingly fits into a pattern of strange deaths in the UK that have since been linked to Russia. In 2013, Boris Berezovsky was found dead in his home in the UK. The authorities said there was no sign of a struggle, making it seem like a suicide could be an explanation. However, Berezovsky had plenty of enemies in the Kremlin. In 2012, Alexander Perepelichny, a financier who demonstrated evidence that Russian tax officials had allegedly committed fraud, died unexpectedly while running in Surrey. According to US spies, there's intelligence that indicates he was likely, quote, assassinated on direct orders from Putin or people close to him, end quote. In March 2018, a British spy and former Russian official and his daughter were poisoned with a nerve agent that left them in critical condition. Perhaps the most striking part of this case lies in Litvinenko's own certainty in who was responsible for his death. In an interview with the Metropolitan Police Service, Litvinenko said, quote, I have no doubt whatsoever that this was done by the Russian secret services. Having knowledge of the system, I know that the order about such a killing of a citizen of another country on its territory, especially if it is something to do with Great Britain, could have been given by only one person. That person is the president of the Russian Federation, Vladimir Putin, end quote. Litvinenko's confidence in knowing his own killer would lead The Guardian to title an article about the case, Alexander Litvinenko, the man who solved his own murder.
Yeah, it's pretty nuts that it's the poison is taking effect. He sort of has this inevitable demise coming his way.
Yeah.
And he's got a few weeks
Yeah.
to just sort of solve his own death? That's nuts.
Also, I mean, at that point, you know you're gonna die.
Yeah.
Might as well just say everything you want. What are they gonna do? Kill
Yeah.
you again? Like,
Yeah.
it's not like they could. You're gonna die, so you might as well just get everything out there. I guess you would have to maybe be worried about your family.
Yeah.
Yeah, I guess that would be a thing to think about. But
Real bummer.
The second theory is that Litvinenko's death could have been in the interest of those in the UK who wanted to avoid being extradited to Russia. Lugovoy even suggested that Boris Berezovsky was involved in Litvinenko's death, while denying his own culpability. Others have speculated that Berezovsky could have been responsible for the murder as a means of sullying Putin's image. The inquiry report acknowledges that some accuse Berezovsky of ordering Litvinenko's death out of fear that Litvinenko could potentially blackmail him. The report also concedes that Litvinenko had at times spoken about, quote, taking some form of action against Mr. Berezovsky, end quote. Though, the report also notes that it doesn't appear he ever took any of these actions. The report says, quote, it was not unusual for Mr. Litvinenko to propose courses of action in conversation with friends and associates that never subsequently came to anything. Mr. Litvinenko and Mr. Berezovsky remained friends until the end of Mr. Litvinenko's life. There was no blackmail, and therefore no motive for Mr. Berezovsky to have Mr. Litvinenko killed, end quote. In addition, the report notes that it was Lugovoy who actively canvassed the idea that Berezovsky was behind Litvinenko's death.
It's a lot of logical leaps, or illogical leaps, I should say, to make for this theory to be correct.
It'd be a rough life to know that all your friends could kill you at any moment.
Yeah. It'd be even surprising if you didn't see it coming.
Yeah,
Some people see it coming, though, and there's nothing they could do about it.
that's true.
Nothing they could do about it.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. I don't like this bit, Ryan.
What bit are you talking about?
Nothing. Let's continue.
The third theory ties into the suggestion made by Izvestia, a Russian newspaper, that Litvinenko could have killed himself if he was suffering from a terminal illness of some kind. It said, quote, if he knew he was dying, he may have taken poison and signed whatever papers his allies brought to him, end quote. Lugovoy's lawyer also asked that the inquest into Litvinenko's death consider, quote, death by misadventure and suicide, end quote. However, the inquiry report explains how Marina Litvinenko, Alexander Litvinenko's widow, provided evidence that Litvinenko was active around the time of his poisoning, not suffering from depression. She noted that as long as she had known her husband, she had never known him to consider killing himself. Friends supported Marina's views on this matter. The report also notes that it seems as though Litvinenko had no access to polonium-210 before he was poisoned.
Well, of course he didn't. Yeah. Who does have that?
Apparently these two guys.
What do you even get? You don't go down to the corner shop. Oh, you can give me some Twizzlers and some polonium-210.
Yeah, apparently these two guys had access to it so much that it was fucking falling out of their jacket
That's because
pockets.
they were given it by
Putin? This seems like a good time. If you're watching this, Putin, you know, I'm just reporting what's already been reported here. So you're really just killing the messenger if you kill me.
You got bigger fish to fry.
You really, if you're concerned about us two, your list must not be that impressive. These two guys that he sent out to kill even this high-ranking ex-Russian agent, they don't seem like the sharpest tools in the shed either.
A couple of Keystone Cops.
He sent Paul Blart after him. So you know what? Maybe it doesn't matter. Maybe he'd probably send out like his nephew or something.
Yeah.
His 10-year-old nephew. I don't know if he has one.
Craig.
He sent Craig to come kill us, and I think hopefully I'd be able to handle Craig.
So who poisoned Litvinenko with the deadly polonium that would eventually lead to his demise? And at whose orders? While it's widely accepted that Lugovoy and Koftin are the only people that could have poisoned Litvinenko, we don't have a smoking gun on Putin ordering Litvinenko's assassination, despite the UK inquiry's conclusion that it was probably at Putin's orders. However, it's still important to note that theory number 1 is the only one that those outside of Putin's government and its allies assign genuine credibility. Nevertheless, Putin has dismissed the allegations against Lugovoy and Koftin in spite of pressure on Russia to extradite the two men to the UK. Lugovoy and Koftin remain at large. So in a sense, the strange tea time events that took place on November 1st, 2006 and the mysterious death of Alexander Litvinenko remain unsolved.
I guess I know where I'm putting my money on.
Yeah,
this
I
one.
mean, officially this one seems to be unsolved. And really the only reason why it is because Russia's like, didn't do it.
Wasn't us.
Nah.
I feel like this is equivalent to John Wayne Gacy being like, wasn't me.
I know.
And everyone else being like, yeah, well, you know, the crawl space and everything.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, but I say it wasn't me, so
Yeah.
guess it's unsolved.
Do you look under your crawl space often?
Yeah.
Didn't think so. I don't look under mine. I didn't know those bodies were there.